Hello, Mrs. Truesdell. This is your post-observation conference from your read aloud lesson in sixth grade language arts when you read A Pet by Cynthia Rylant. I thought you had an effective introduction explaining what Reader's Digest was, it being a collection of short stories with a beginning, middle, and end, and how that applied to the reading that you were going to be doing. Why did you choose this as your intro?
I'm trying to convey to the students frequently in language arts that reading is a lifelong passion and you can grow it into that. So I wanted the students to understand that even as adults, we read short stories. The short story unit is newer to them, and we have read some short stories. But I wanted them to understand the many formats that they come in, that children as well as adults read them. And they like hearing about my life and my kids and my parents. So I thought that would pique their interest as well.
That makes sense. So I noticed following that you did introduce the book specifically, the cover and the author, and that you delved into some prior readings that you and the class had done by that author. So I thought that was a good way for them to recollect some previous teachings.
The students love Cynthia Rylant, so anytime they know I'm going to read something by her, it automatically piques their interest as well.
Oh, okay.
So I intentionally chose, or I do choose books by that author because I do like her a lot.
Oh, all right. So I also noticed that you asked open-ended questions to the students at that point about their own pets. Um, what did you like or dislike about the discussion, the resulting discussion from that question?
So the reason I asked the question is because in the beginning of the short story, as you noticed, the girl receives a goldfish as a pet and feels a little disappointed. So the reason I wanted to ask in the beginning about a pet was to get them thinking about pets. I wish I had let them spend some more time discussing their pets and why they love their pets, because I feel like it probably would have helped them later on in the story.
Okay. I noticed that you didn't introduce any of the words that were going to be found in the text by showing them cards or any kind of other informative vehicle for that. Did you feel like there was any vocabulary in the story that may have been challenging to some students or?
So the class is made up of several students of varying levels. So some students have really great vocabulary and would understand every single word, but some wouldn't. So in retrospect, it probably would have been helpful for me to have some key words such as fond. I don't know if that's a word that they've come across, or I believe another word was relent. So something, and when the parents relented, it was an important part of the story. So it probably would have been a good word to discuss beforehand.
Okay. I agree. I think maybe just a little touching base on a couple of those vocabulary words might have helped a couple students.
I agree.
Okay. I thought you did a really impressive job of actually reading the story and capturing and maintaining the student interest during your reading. Thought you did a good job of changing your facial expressions and your tone throughout and emphasizing the important words in the text, to kind of make sure the students were noticing and paying attention to those words specifically. So I thought you did a really good job of that. Obviously, you have a lot of experience in reading to the children and maintaining their interest, so that went well.
We read every day. So the more interested I'm in what we're reading, the more interested they will be in what I'm reading.
Clearly, that shows. So that was good. You also did a really good job of involving the children throughout the story by pausing and asking them questions to kind of check their level of understanding and making sure they were keeping up with what you were talking about. A couple of examples from that were when you asked them about the musical instruments that they play personally in their own lives, and why parents would buy a cheap used goldfish as a point for them to discuss. So I noticed that you also let them turn and talk with those questions and kind of formulate some of their own answers to those things too.
Yes, and I believe the students look for those opportunities because then they know that's the time when they can give their opinion. Being in middle school, they like to give their opinions about everything. So having the opportunity to do that about the story, I think, is something that they wait for. And we've developed that routine so they know that's when they are able to talk to their friends as opposed to other times.
Okay. And with that, I felt like your classroom management strategy of the 1, 2 eyes on you, making that statement was very effective. It seemed to bring them back focused on you, and their attention came back very quickly. So I felt like that was a practiced and rehearsed classroom management strategy that, is working well for you.
Yes, that's a routine we developed because the students need to know when it's time to stop talking, when they have their time to turn and talk. So they know when they hear me say that the discussion time is over, and then they'll have their turn to share with the group.
Okay. Moving through the lesson towards the end of the story, when you had kind of finished up the reading, I noticed you did a very good job of inviting the children to retell parts of the story in their own words. It seemed like you asked them to analyze the information for certain parts and then synthesize it and repeat it back to you in their own phrasing so that you could tell they had a deeper level of understanding of some of the important parts of the text. So I felt like that was a good job too.
Thank you. We've spent time talking about how when you read the last word of the story's not over. Your thinking needs to continue even when the story is done, which aids in comprehension. So it's an important part of reading that I try to drill into the students.
And it was effective. You could tell it was effective because the different students had come up with different interpretations of the material, and then your discussion with each of them as to why they were both relevant, was very effective.
Yeah, and they need to understand as readers that there's the author's intention of what the story should be, but it's also what you bring to it as a reader and your own thoughts and your feelings about it that make a difference in the story as well.
Okay. Following that, I also noticed you gave a lot of positive encouragement to the students who were feeling a little reluctant about taking the state tests that week by telling them that they were some of the smartest students you'd ever had, and that if they would do on the tests what they had done in your class that morning, that they would be perfect and it would be very effective. So I felt like that was a good benefit for them, obviously feeling a little nervous about the test coming up, that you kind of encouraged them and kind of gave them some positive thoughts heading into that. So one thing I was thinking was after the lesson, if maybe we could discuss an extension activity that would have allowed the students to kind of further their understanding after you had finished the reading. So I don't know if that was maybe something you had thought about.
So they could use some practice with writing, and they can use some practice with pulling evidence from the text or any text and writing about it. So one way I could take some of their weaknesses and involve it in that would be to have them write a journal about their pets and what makes their pet so special, and go back into the text by Cynthia Rylant and see if they can find examples of ways the pet was special to Emily. If they don't have pets, they can relate it to another story that they've read or a movie that they've seen involving owners and pets.
Okay. I think that sounds great. I think it was a very effective lesson and you did a great job.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.